right, here we are. Welcome. Hello, friends. Welcome to today's kitchen table conversation. Very excited to be here with all of my relatives here and to be welcoming in our special guest star, Ivette. And so, before we get started, per usual, I'd love to go around and have folks just introduce ourselves and then we'll get into it. So my name, again, for everybody is Sean Hayes. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And I'll be facilitating our chat here today as Peng is away and out of town at a retreat. So wherever he is, we're sending him good vibes. And of course, we miss him and we'll see him next time. And I'm coming to everybody here from Duluth, Minnesota, where it is smoky and smells like a bonfire.
I'm Roderick Southall calling in from North Minneapolis. It does not smell like a bonfire here. And he, him, my pronouns.
Hello, everyone. My name is Felix Martinez. My pronouns are he, him, and his. Reporting from a coffee shop in Eagan, Minnesota. Here smell like coffee. So super happy and excited with this conversation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Serrano Robinson. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm coming out of Duluth as well.
Yeah, and Ivette, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Ivette Izea-Martinez. I use pronoun she, hers, ella. And I'm also reporting from the same coffee shop Felix at here in Eagan. I can hear the blender, not smoky smell though. Happy to be here today.
Well, awesome. I know we're very excited that you're here with us and that you're joining the conversation. Really excited to get into it, and also just want to throw some love out to Austin, who is here, not on camera, but is here monitoring the comments and the chat there. So as you're watching our conversation, we encourage you to get involved, to ask your questions, to share whatever's coming up for you. As Ivette is sharing about what we're going to be talking about today during our 26th kitchen table conversation live with all of you. And so Ivette does work with Casa de Esperanza, formerly Casa de Esperanza, and now Esperanza United. And we are just really pumped that you're here to share a little bit about yourself and your story and how you got involved doing this work to end gender-based violence and what that is like for you as a woman, as a female identified person, to be working with us guys, masculine people. And so I'd love to just jump into it. If you, I'd love to maybe have you just tell us the story of how you got involved doing this kind of work around ending, domestic violence, sexual assault, all of these different types of violence, and would just love to hear how you got into it.
Absolutely. So I think, as for many of us or many people in community, the story is similar. I got to Esperanza United before Casa Esperanza really by chance. I had been working corporate world for many years and I was not happy with what I was doing. It wasn't necessarily going in line with my values, and I wanted to do something that was going to put me more in contact with the community, that was going to help me really live my passion, that is children welfare. And I got to Casa Esperanza really not knowing much of what I was going to do or what I was getting myself into. I knew I was going to be working with a Latino community in Minnesota for the first time since I have moved here. And that made me happy. I knew I was going to have an opportunity to work with youth and children. And that was the extra benefit for me. But really, in the 10 years that I've been at Casa, I just had my 10-year anniversary. I've opened my eyes. I've become more awake in I always like to share this because there is a sense that you have to always be doing this work, right? Or be aware since you were very young to do the work. And that's not the case. I learned a lot at Casa. I have to say, growing up and in all through my life, I was surrounded by survivors and people that were experiencing violence and folks that were using violence, not necessarily paying much attention to it. I think because it was in the news, it was in the newspaper, because I was a child and, that was not the place for children to share their opinion and those things that were happening. I wasn't given the opportunity really to think what that meant for me, or what was it that I was witnessing and seeing in some of my family members and community and friends of my mother's and relatives. So as I think back, in every stage of my life, I've had a close friend or a close family member who has experienced violence. But it wasn't really until I came to Casa Esperanza that at Esperanza United, that I had the opportunity to reflect on that, to learn from those experiences, to also learn change that I could make in my own life so that I wouldn't contribute to a culture of violence, because I did at some point. I think a lot of the preconceived notions, the ideas, stereotypes, especially if they related to gender, that were around me growing up, didn't help me much to stop that cycle of violence around me in community. So I have two daughters, they're teenagers. I will always say Esperanza United helped me become a better mother for my two daughters. It helped me become a better woman, a better community member, and to really open my eyes and do something and name what I was witnessing. So that is really how I came to Casa Esperanza. It's not an epical realization or a 4-year college degree on gender studies or women's studies. It was really fate, chance, and I liked what I was learning. I was having an opportunity to reclaim my humanity and my womanhood and who I am, and find the strength again in myself. I'm an immigrant. I moved to Minnesota when I was 16. I've always lived in Minnesota since then. I've been here 25 years. And when you move as a young immigrant who doesn't speak English, a lot of your self-value, self-worth gets doubted. You start doubting who you are, what you can accomplish. Your goal and dreams seem farther and farther away. And while I was happy and I had my family and a lot of the things that I wanted had accomplished, I think I had forgotten a little bit about my own self-care and self-worth and self-value. And being at Esperanza United and doing this work really helped me personally in that sense. The story of women that I work with were key and pivotal really to the work that I do, and to the place where I find myself now as a human being and as a woman.
Well, congratulations on that anniversary too, 10 years. I mean, that's something. So thank you for all of the work that you've done for our communities. And I guess I can relate, just, like I also didn't have any teaching or, education school for this kind of work, and sort of very similarly kind of found myself, connecting with men as peacemakers. And so I guess I'm, just remembering that, and just, thinking how grateful I am that, sort of the universe put me into that place, because that has been huge for me. And I guess I'm just wondering what the rest of the guys are thinking, or what questions or thoughts are emerging for you as you hear from Ivette.
Thank you for being here today. I was, you said a couple of things I thought were that I wanted to ask you about. One was, you said that it made you a better woman. And I'm curious about about, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a bit about to say more about that, because that was something that struck me. Because I think that, I don't know if a lot of work that we do, we really attribute it. We say that it does that for us. And you also talked about men who use violence. And so it made me think about men who use violence to rip, or to try to rip, or to try to marginalize or minimize a woman's womanhood. So that kind of all was kind of coming together for me. And I was just wondering if you would talk a little bit more about how your work has made you a better woman, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. I'm not exempt from gender stereotypes and the ideas that are instilled into what women should be and the role of women and how we should live our lives. And when I say it made me a better woman, I mean, it really helped me to not limit myself, not to limit my daughters, and not to limit the women around me about what they could accomplish and who they could become. And then also the balance of a professional life, but then also following my dreams and giving myself time for me to do things that I wanted to do for my own good. And understanding that I really don't owe my humanity or who I choose to be, become, act, wear, or dress to anybody. It was very limited, right? So I was very constrained to how a woman should behave, what a woman says and what it doesn't say, how you should act, how you should dress, what comes first, right? The ultimate goal is you become a wife and you have children and you're to take care of your home, and your home has to be perfect. And a woman should cook and should be a better cook and should love cooking. And I had all these ideas that were they were holding me hostage of who I wanted, who I really was. I always said and Felix, who's my partner, he says, I'm a free spirit. I love to run a 4-wheel over a pile of mud. I love it, right? And at the same time, I can turn around and wear high heels and makeup if I want to, not because somebody says that I should. And for many years, I saw that was the way I had to be. I had to step out of my house in full makeup and very girly like, or what society says that is girly like. I should have dressed, and I love ties. I love a tie and a suit. I could wear a dress, but I'm a bigger fan of a suit and tie with heels. But there were so many things that hold me from what I could be and what I wanted and who my true self was. And when I say that it helped me become a better woman, it's because then those limits that I was imposing on myself, I was also holding the women around me to the same standards, right? My friends, my daughters, the women in my family, and more than likely causing harm by holding them to those standards, whether or not it was intentional, because it wasn't, but it was how I was measuring myself in my womanhood, and it was also how I was measuring the women in my life on what womanhood was supposed to look like. And that really helped me to not put limits to my daughters, to, be who you want to be. You want to use power tools, more power to you, do dance, but play soccer, and be loud if you want to be loud, or be quiet if you want to be quiet. Like, just you do you, and don't let anybody tell you how you should be or act. So I hope that answers your question. And what was the second part to the question? I'm sorry.
I spoke about and it was related, I think. It was about your use of, men using force, right, or violence to constrain a woman's womanhood, if you will.
Right. I personally, I've been very lucky to be in a relationship that has been healthy, and I'm blessed in that sense. But when I think of the professional world, and I share that I work in corporate, I also had these ideas of what I needed to be and how I needed to act, right, in corporate world to keep my job, to be successful in my job, because it was a world that was led by men. And, being sensitive, being a mother, giving priority to my family was not acceptable, right? I had to be somebody who gave priority to my career, who was willing to be at work 24/7, who was always looking sharp and on time, and that would laugh at the jokes that were hurtful and not take them to pain, but just laugh along with the guys. So in that sense, I think the professional world, that those microaggressions, that use of violence at work, really constrain who you are, because you have to pretend to be something that you're not in order to just hold a job, or be accepted. At the same time, fear. I mean, while I've never experienced violence directly, physical violence from a partner, that doesn't mean there weren't men around me who were using violence. And it was scary too. So I'm not a person that enjoys argument. I step away from argument. And I think part of that is fear, especially if it involves men, because I never know when there is going to be violence. So growing up, I was always terrified of fights. If I tell you my biggest fear being in high school back home and then here was being near a fight. It's like whenever I saw a fight was going to break loose, it's like, okay, I'm out of here. And part of that was that fear of finding myself being hit or being in the middle of the fight, because I've seen the pain that a fist can cause, and I've seen the results of it, and I've seen men around me use violence, and use fear to also, make you quiet.
Thank you.
Hi, Ivette. I have a couple questions for you. For a woman who's engaging with men in this field, can you share some of those challenges as a woman engaging with men, those aha moments? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. I think the challenges where there's some that could probably jump to everybody's mind, right? There's only so much that I'm going to be able to relate to a man when running groups, and working directly with men. At the same time, I found that men really enjoy being able to hold a space and being listened to, but then also asking questions of, why would this make somebody feel upset? Or tell me more about that. Why is it causing this reaction? So a lot of my aha moments in working with men come from realizing that most of the time men really don't know, that it is a lack of knowledge, that men are not born violent. I mean, it's not something that you're born and right away you choose to use violence to solve your problems, but that there is that conspiracy of the environment around you, right? That teaches a lot of things to women, and it doesn't teach the same thing to men, and vice versa. And something is lost. So when I sat among a group of men and I was able to understand, you really don't know. Because you're asking me why. You're asking me why will this cause pain, or why will somebody react negatively? Why your wife think you're upset? That really tells me you're not in tune with your emotions. You don't understand. You're just acting from what you were taught and what you knew. And that part really helped me personally also to heal and forgive. I'm not saying excuse. I am not excusing the use of violence, but I'm saying forgive, to understand that this person was not always this way, that something happened. in the process of growing up that taught this human being that being abusive or using violence was the only way to survive and accomplish what you needed and wanted in life, including having a partner. So my biggest aha moments have been, there's a lot of baggage that's expected and is instilled in women. And there's a lot of baggage and responsibilities that are placed in men and boys' shoulders that we don't often talk about and that is not discussed. And that men themselves don't talk about it either. And the same expectations that are put into women about what we should be and what we should become are also placed on men. The difference is we have opportunities to talk about it, and it's okay for women to talk about it, but we're still not at the point where society thinks that it's okay for men to talk about it and to break away from some of those things.
Thank you for being just honest and open with us. I do have a question. You said first of all, congrats on being there for 10 years. That is super dope. For me, I think about what was the it factor for you? Was it a conversation maybe that you had with a youth? Was it the way your coworkers were? Was it kind of the way you felt working there? What kind of made you feel like this is it? I can, because sometimes I feel that way about Matt, but I'm just I could be here forever, and not even think about it. So for you being there for 10 years, I can only imagine that feeling is stronger. So if you can kind of speak on it, what was, in your opinion, the it factor for you?
The it factor for me being at Esperanza United for so long, I was seen as a whole human being. And it wasn't always easy, I will tell you that. I mean, I also when I said I work in corporate, I was in corporate for about 10, 15 years. So when I came to nonprofit world and in the work that I'm doing now, I was my limits, were very constrained. I would always say, I come to work to do my work. I didn't come to work to make friends. Right? It was just, I'm here to do something. 5 o'clock, I'm done. I'm out the door. That is very much a corporate world, right? And it was hard. It was a cultural shock at the beginning for me, and a cultural shock for those that work with me, because we're a Latina organization. So the majority of the folks around me are Latinas. They spoke Spanish. I was used to only speaking English at work. Spanish was this is my comfort language. I use this at home with my mom. This is my intimate language. This is not the language that I use at work. So internally, I battled that a lot. It was really hard. And I pushed. I tried to push away and push away until I started seeing the culture around me, and I started feeling this feels a little bit like being back home. I'm surrounded by, my sisters and my aunts, and they care about me. And folks started asking about my children, and meetings started with, how are you doing? And what did you do with this weekend? And, how are things going in school for your kids? And I've never had that before. So that for me was the moment where I realized, I can do something good. I can also grow professionally, and I can still be a mom, and I can be everything that I want to be, and I don't have to choose either or. So after 10 years, I think that's why I'm at Casa. I found some of my best friends at Casa Esperanza. Friends that we've shared things I've never imagined that we would share, friends that have met my family in other countries, that my daughters call aunties. I had my youngest daughter at one point walked up to Patty, who's the CEO and president of Esperanza United, and said, Patty, someday I'm going to have your job. I could not imagine one of my daughters doing that if I was working at a corporate world. So I could not imagine the CEO or president even knowing my daughter. So that is the it. At that moment, Felix wasn't working at Casa, but it became a family thing. My daughters became part of youth programming because it wanted to. So Esperanza United just became a part of my life. It wasn't just a job that I was doing.
I appreciate that.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I just appreciate that so much. Just like that idea of we're like whole people who have jobs, but we're also not and, you know, we're also parents or friends or nephews or nieces to people. And I love that. It's like and I spent so many years of my life in jobs where it was very similar, not necessarily corporate, but you know, it was, yeah, you just show up, you do your job, you sort of know a little bit about your coworkers, but there was nothing like deeper there happening, like within myself and with those relationships. So it's just like that idea of like employers and places of work, like honoring the fact that we are total, you know, human beings who have lives outside of that work, and it kind of moves, and we move within all of those spheres. So
you mentioned that I love your phrasing. You mentioned this piece about this conspiracy in the atmosphere around you, and I'm wondering, like, as you were moving into sort of a workplace that was where you could bring more of yourself, and where it was kind of reshaping sort of your sense of things. How did like those non-work people in your life respond, right? Because they're used to you coming as one person, right? And then you begin to come as this other person. So I'm just wondering how they, if there were surprises or funny moments or moments of reckoning, if you will.
Of course, the only thing that I can compare that is to when men come for the first time to these conversations and then they have to go back to community, right? And it's like, how is what you're learning well received? It was a process, and there are friendships and relationships that are no longer there. Because at the same time, I recognize that those were relationships that were holding me back and were not healthy for me or my family. So some of those, you know, I had to choose to let go. There's also codes. I have this code with one of my coworkers, you know, because we have friends in common. We're all part of the community. And sometimes we choose to go to gatherings where we know things are going to come up that challenge the work we do. And, you know, we'll say, okay, you know, when I give you the signal with my eyes, that means it's time for us to go, because we know it's not the place, not the time, or there's only so much that we're going to be able to share. So that your coworkers become a really support system for that. And you start learning that that is the safe space. I think that is what I learned, that for me, as I was learning more, I had to find safer spaces where I could be and explore. I also have to become very responsible of what I was showing and the role model that I was becoming for youth, because I work with youth and youth in my community. And it's really complicated when you have youth that hear you say something when you're in programming or activities, and then you're outside in the community sharing space with their family and their parents, and they're saying things that don't agree with what they're learning, and that look at you to see how are you going to respond or what are you going to do. So I had to stay true to that and be a support for the youth too, and learn how to navigate, you know, working with the parents and the adults in their life that were related to me as friends, to have some of those conversations in a way that they were not going to feel attacked, and understanding that I had gone through a process, because I was lucky enough to work at Esperanza United, that not everybody was going through and moving on at the same speed that I was. But learning that is challenging too. So, you know, it's a slow process. It's like you learn to navigate it. I think you first are bombarded with all this learning and awakening, and you go out and it's like, oh, that's not right, and that was rude, and that's a microaggression, and this, you know, and then you almost want to like put everything in little bubbles of everything that is going wrong. And then you look around and it's like, okay, now what am I doing? I'm pushing everybody away from me. And I'm having all this learning, but they're not having that chance, right? So I'm penalizing them for something that they really have no control over at the moment. So then I had to step back and be like, oh, there's got to be another way to do this. So how do I use what I know, right, to help bring those conversations in a way that we're more friendly and inviting rather than pushing people out, and learning that, you know, I can't change the world. I can try, I can do my part. It's not in my control to change everybody's behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs. There's only so much that I can do. So I think as soon as I was able to recognize that, it was a lot easier to continue a relationship with others. I think if you ask many of my friends from a long time, some are happy because they went through this process before me. So those were the ones that were feeling hurt by some of my attitudes and behaviors, that were just, you know, happy to see my personal growth. And now we can have deeper conversations, and we learn together, and we challenge each other, and relationships have become stronger and healthier. And there are others that will probably tell you, I've become too sensitive and I take everything too hard, too serious, and I'm not funny because I can't laugh at sexist jokes, you know, or yes, not everything is serious, Yvette. You're taking it out of context. You're not at work. And that becomes challenging because it's, well, no, it's just that now I know it's not funny, you know. Now I know better not to laugh about it, because when I do, I'm perpetrating violence or pain on another community or somebody from my community. So it's a dance. You take 2 steps forwards, 1 back, I think.
Yvette, we all know the impact that this work have on us, our circles, or families, you know, or sons and daughters. So when you think about that, how you take care of yourself? Just because it's a lot of heavy work, you know, especially when you're helping survivors, or you're helping community and family, you know, what do you do to take care of yourself?
That's the question that everybody wants to answer, right? It's hard. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's easier to talk about it and tell others how to take care of themselves, and for me to practice it. I do try to remind myself, and there are a few things I can find joy in. So doing things that I enjoy and I love for myself, I think it's a big part of it. I really enjoy cross-country skiing, so I try to get out there in the winter, even if it's alone. Just that sense of being in the woods with your skis, you know, and it's so quiet. It's a feeling that I love. I really enjoy kayaking because of the same reason. You know, I get to use my arms. I don't have to think. So I can give my brain a rest. I think in this work, resting my brain is what I really need, because the work is not so much physical, but it's not having to think, and just being able to do something that doesn't require a lot of, you know, thinking and being analytical and thinking of what could possibly go wrong. And then there are the simple pleasures of food. I'm an immigrant. I do have home foods that I find joy on. So when I don't have snow and I don't have a kayak, food from my home country, a good home cooked meal is ideal. If my mom cooks it, is better, but that doesn't always happen. So, you know, when everything fails, I always say I go for a coffee and an arepa, which is a meal from my home country, and that's how I try to take care of myself. There's nothing like a hug from my family. I love my children. Of course, I get upset with them sometimes, you know, but a hug from them, it just erases all problems. And I have 2 puppies, so they're a big part of my self-care. I just find joy in them. They're really cute, and they like to lick, and I rub them, and they cuddle with me. And so I practice self-care in many ways that are just part of everyday life.
I really like that question, Felix, because I was thinking too along similar lines, like just, you know, in the short amount of time that I've been a part of doing this kind of work, um, you know, what I notice is that oftentimes, you know, when I'm in trainings or going to these presentations or, you know, it is primarily women who are in the room. You know, I'm oftentimes one of the only dudes there. And so I was thinking about that and just like, you know, what I've learned historically about like the kind of move to end violence movement or however you call that. Um, you know, historically thinking about all the, you know, hundreds of thousands of women who have done this kind of work forever, you know, and within communities and I'm just, yeah, I guess I'm just pondering that because I recently was having a conversation with a coworker, and I have these conversations with my wife as well about um, emotional labor and emotional energy. Um, and as someone who has not always been good personally at knowing like what feelings I'm feeling and being attached or connected to those emotions, and then thinking about all of the work that women and femme folks and non-binary folks as well who are, you know, doing this important work within community, um, and then are also, you know, taking care of families and homes and sort of expected to continue to like follow those community standards of what women are supposed to do. And so I don't know if there's an exact question in there, but there's something about men needing to learn how to kind of hold some of that emotional energy, I think, or that labor. Um, and I'm curious too, like what's coming up for the rest of you guys too, thinking about that. Cause I literally just had this conversation with a coworker and she was like, I feel like I do all of this stuff all the time. I'm constantly working, I'm constantly taking care of the baby and doing these things and not always feeling supported by the men and masculine people in their lives. And I know my wife has said that as well. So just wondering about what comes up for you guys about that. And then Yvette too, like jump in.
I think for me, it's hard to disconnect, you know, especially when you work with community, you know, to leave work at work and once you're at home, be at home, you know, especially when I work with community, I feel that level of responsibility. And sometimes I'm with someone, I'm, you know, talking, providing services. And once that person leaves, you can see them happy, excited, they're seeing a new opportunity, hope. And I'm the one sometimes who gets stuck with all that, you know, that pain, you know, and I stay home and sometimes I can barely sleep thinking, okay, how I can support that person, what kind of the resources are out there to provide some hope to this individual who's being exploited, who's being abused. And as a human being, it's hard to disconnect from that, you know, and that's why it's important and ask the question of self-care because it's tough. And this not only happened with my work right now, previously working with Esperanza United, I used to work as a financial advisor. So a lot of the families leave all the hopes on you in order to help them solve their situation and provide them with the tools. And at the end, you know, you do it, but every time these families had a stroke or something, they always come to you expecting you to help their, you know, their situation. What in this case, it's totally different. You know, I'm talking now as a financial advisor. You know, you're providing those tools so they can succeed in life. Obviously, when there's people that are going through abuse, it's totally different. But it's very important to understand how this emotional labor sometimes can drain us and the importance of taking care of ourselves. You know, I think unconsciously we're being drained, you know, day by day by this work. And sometimes it will be easier just to work, you know, in a factory when you only need to do one thing and you don't need to think about anything else. So you just do that. Once you're done with their job, you're going home and, you know, you don't have nothing to worry. But I think that's something that comes with the work. That's something I really enjoy. And like maybe Serrano say, you know, I can see doing this work for the rest of my life. But we need to also take care of ourselves because this kind of work is very draining, and you know, we just need to look for things outside of the box, how we can help ourselves, help others, and create communities of, you know, of love and respect, and places that, you know, our future generations have these tools that they could be more successful in life. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's real key. Real key. I guess that's kind of one of the only keys that I know right now is that it's like kind of taking it away from, like, as you come home, like leaving it there. Because that emotional labor does become really, really tough. And it's like, I think, Felix, you said all the perfect points from like some days you like wish it is a factory to where you're not even thinking about it. Because that's how it is. When you leave a factory, you're like, I'm not thinking about no more boxes and shit. I'm cool. But when it comes to people's lives and things you care about, even that passion will have you up, right? Like in weird times of the night and weird aspects. And it'll even have you like taking on more in your personal life. Like I can only believe that, like, you know, that job and your personal definitely intertwines with that emotional labor and taking on more. So for me, what I try to do, like, at least for my partner, is like help her understand that she's done all she can, especially if she's home. Because with love, obviously, but me, I'm sort of like, I try to like be honest as I can. And like, you know, if she's like home and thinking like hard about just what she can or couldn't do while we're at home, I just try to have her know like you've done all you can from when you're there, and even when you're at home, and just let her know how much that she is of value to the people that she works with. And also try my best to see if there's anything that she needs, like when she is like around or home. So, because it's tough. Like I try to like, I can't pretend that it's easy to say that I can come home and like get away from my job. Like even if it is easy for me, I can't pretend and even say that I closely think that it's easy for anybody else. Because one thing I know is like it's literally like a double edge, and it's not bad at all. Because it's the more you care, the more you think about it. So it's like it ain't like some BS, or you're just like, oh, I wish I would have like cleaned the bathroom better. No, you're up thinking like, damn, like I wish I could have spoke to her in a different way, or I wish I could have been more patient, or I wish I could have like told her this, or I wish I could have been there and you know did this different in a different way. So I think a lot of it comes from passion. So I just be trying my best to like reassure her that like you're definitely of value even when you're not there, and to just try to like, you know, take care of things at home, or just help validate as best that I can, because I know that that's tough. Like on days where I bring it home, it's like it's almost like 24-hour ending cycle of like that emotional, like, yeah, it's kind of like flared up the entire time. So I just try my best to support, like, and ask like whatever I can do, just to help like take some weight off at the end of the day. But yeah, you're absolutely right that that emotional labor and being able to not take it home or manage yourself when you do, because sometimes you can't even, you know, control that. So managing yourself, it's really, really key.
I wanted to add something that you just made me think of, Serrano, and is that, you know, in terms of self-care, something that I have to be really thankful to the advocates and the intervention part of the work Esperanza United for is learning that it's not my role to save the community. That's not what we're setting out to do. It's on built-in strengths and sharing information and providing tools, and genuinely believing that each survivor, each person that's experiencing violence, having the right tools is going to make whatever the best decision is for themselves, and that I need to accept that, because it is their life, it is their choice, it's not my choice. I can't tell them when to leave or where to go. All I can do is explain the process, give the tools, and trust, right? And that, I'm not going to say that it makes it perfect, but it does make it easier at the end, because you understand what your role is. You know that it's not, I don't go out there to save my community because my community doesn't need to be saved. I'm out there sharing information, providing tools, and building, you know, community, being part of the community. So I think the more that in this work we understand that, and that funders understand that too, because many times grants are set up that way. You know, how many people can you get out of violence? It doesn't work like that. The more that we can also practice self-care And yes, of course, you're going to hear the horrible stories and the difficult stories that you're going to take home. But you're going to rest assured that you did your part, you did your job, you did what you had to do. And then you just have to trust that that person's going to make the right decision.
I was about to weirdly say, I wish I can hear that again, but I'm glad that it's recorded. So thankful for life. I have two just last questions, and they're like split questions, and they don't have anything to do with each other. The first one is like for you, and if there even is a typical day, and if not, that's completely okay. What does a typical day look like for you at Esperanza United? And then the other half of that question is, which is not related, if you could be any animal right now, what would it be and why?
Okay. Typical day. I used to have somewhat typical days before COVID-19. In COVID-19, there is no typical days. You know, you can plan. Certainly, I'm a planner, so I like to plan. And then I turn on the computer and I realize that I just have to go along with how the days come, you know, because you don't know what's going to change. Now, in pre-COVID, a typical day, it varied, you know, in moments of programming, it could be that I leave home directly to a setting where we are doing leadership development, whether it's a school or a community setting with youth or adults. Normally that takes a good half of the day. And, you know, now in my new role, I also have a lot of administrative tasks. So you could say that the other half of my day goes a lot on reports and making sure that grant requirements are being met and finalizing contracts and looking into new opportunities. I also supervise staff, so providing support to those that work with me, and in between building some time to catch up with my colleagues in the hallway and maybe share a coffee and a good laugh. Yes, and you know, and then some days something happens and it's half your day goes into conversations about how is this going to impact the work that we're doing and what needs to change. Yeah. An animal that I could be right now and why. There are three animals I love. If I had to pick one right now, I would say an owl. That's one of the ones that I love. So people usually think owls are really cute, fluffy, you know, and sweet. And we have movies to thank for that. Owls sit up very high in trees and they observe. They don't act fast. They observe the surroundings, and they attack, or they, you know, catch their prey when they're hungry and when it's the right moment. But they're very observant, and they sit up high, just looking. So I think in this present and moment time, with so many things changing and not knowing how to always act or what's the right thing to do, sitting up high and just observing and being aware of where I am in my surroundings seems like a safe place to be.
I have a question, probably a little bit different, but as a woman working in this field, and maybe for other women that maybe want to do the same work that you do right now, what will be your recommendation for women that want to engage with men, or any tips of how to do this work, especially with men and from the woman's lens? Can you say something about that?
Yeah, I would say walking into the work with an open mind. Try to, leave prejudice aside of what we believe men are or should be. But then also don't be afraid to stand your ground and call men out, especially men that are doing this work. Just because there are only a few men doing the work doesn't mean they're the best and the experts, and you have to throw a parade around them, right? I think if you're doing the work, you also have to hold men accountable. So they're doing this work. And we had this conversation earlier with a colleague about what being an ally meant. And I said, I always struggle a little bit with the word ally in this work, because an ally to me is somebody who stands by you, understands you, sees you, but are they taking responsibility? So doing this work, I will say, don't hope for men to be your ally, hope for men to do the work. They have responsibility, just like we do too. So hold them accountable to be responsible for the work they're doing, and to hold other men accountable. But then also don't walk in judging them already and saying, you're the cause of all my problems, because that's not it. There's many other nuances, and there are many things outside of our control that have shaped why there is the use of violence so high among men.
And I know we're kind of coming to the end of our conversation, and that was kind of on the flip side. Felix, I appreciate that question. And I was also just wondering if you, like, Ivette, what would you say to guys, masculine people, men who are out there maybe watching this, and who have maybe done some of these things, have used violence, or have told that, sexist joke, or and yet those are the guys who would say, I'm not a bad guy, I love the people in my life. And so I'm just kind of curious what you might say to those men and masculine people who might sort of be sitting on the fence wondering, well, do I want to actually learn more about this? Is it important for me to do this? Yeah.
I will say it's never too late to learn and to want to become your best self. That, every house needs a basement, right? There is a foundation for every building to grow. So while you might be thinking that you're a good man and a sexist joke doesn't harm anybody, that allows for bigger things to happen. So do you want to be the foundation of something that is positive for the society, or do you want to help be the foundation for something that causes harm unto others? So if you are the good men, which I'm sure the majority of men are out there are good, well-intentioned. So why not help be the foundation for something that's great and wonderful for everyone, rather than helping create a culture of pain and violence? So don't be afraid to ask and make mistakes and step in, and don't be afraid of the process. It will be painful in the way, but it's not just painful and hard and complicated for men. It is too for women. I too had to learn. If I was able to learn, anybody can learn too.
Oh, I appreciate that a lot. And I feel very fortunate that I didn't learn this super young. I was in my late 20s, and I can definitely resonate with that it's, we just have to be open, I guess, to like hearing the answers and to asking, what is it really like for you as women, as femme folks? And are there things that I'm doing that are causing harm? Yeah, it's never too late. That's true. I love that. And I also just want to open it up to the rest of the guys here to share any sort of final thoughts or things that you're thinking about. And again, we're just really appreciative of you joining us, Yvette, and kind of giving us a window into what it's like for women who do this work, and who are, seeing that we need more men and masculine people to jump on board and to help out within communities.
Thank you for being here. This was fantastic. It reminded me of a conversation I was having with some folks around service. It was an organization that does service work, and they had a consultant come in and say, well, service work is one thing. Understanding that there's an interdependent relationship between you and the folks you're working with is another. And that caused all kinds of uproar. And I think that the tone of the conversations that we typically have, and particularly the one we had today, was about the give and get of what of when you're working with folks. And that has been joyous to hear. So thank you.
We're playing here. You go ahead, Serrano. I'm okay. Thanks. I apologize for that. I'm very lucky to have Yvette in my life. She's been very supportive and understanding on my life through how to become a better man. She's been sure to make me accountable when it's due, and very happy. And I hope that's the type of relationship that most people should have with their partners, you know, to be supportive, to make people accountable and do it with love, you know, and understanding that nobody's perfect. We need to do a lot to create strong families and create better systems. And yeah, so thank you, Ed, for being part of my life. Thank you for giving me those two beautiful daughters, young adults now, and hopefully our journey gonna continue, you know, till we die. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Yvette.
Yeah, for sure. That statement that you said about like never, like it's never too late to become your best self. Like that literally is like a mind blower. Cause I'm deep into energy, so that just like it blew my mind for today. And the reason why is because like I think it's also one of those like it's one of those cliche statements that we say, right? Like kids are our future. Ones that we say only in a cliche fashion and we don't do shit about. But in all reality, we really have to do that. Like it's really real. Like somebody would just like push it off. Like what do you mean? Like it's never too late to. And no, it really is. Like you could be like 25, you can be 35 and realize like, oh, this shit isn't actually conducive for me. It's not actually working. I'm always miserable, or I'm always getting into it with the same person, or just the same. I'm always in the same headspace and not feeling good. So I just really appreciate you saying that out loud. Like it really is. Like I be trying to tell people that, and it's almost like throwing like a paper like at a wall or something. It's just so I appreciate just like you saying that out loud, because it really is never too late to become your best self. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about like the hard parts about working with male identified people, because we are just ourselves. So sometimes like nobody ever really will sit down to be honest, like, you know. So I really appreciate the honesty. And on the flip side, I appreciate like the hard parts about men that we don't talk about, like the lack of conversations that we do have on like the weight that are put on male identified people in the world, and the lack of conversation on emotions, which leads to a lot of the things that we deal with. So I just appreciate you actually being able to talk about the tough things as well. So I appreciate it, and yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, definitely very, very grateful. And Yvette, if you have any last thoughts, would love to hear it.
Thank you. I'm just excited to have been invited. Felix smiling because he knows I love the work you guys do. I love Peng. I love Mab. So I was joking with him. I said, I've been invited. I'm part of the group. Yes. I have my own sweatshirt from Men of Masculine Folks too. So that makes me happy. You know, those are the little silly things that will make me giggle and make me happy. I know that's even not relevant, but just excited to share this space with you guys. The last thing that I would say is for everybody, whether you're a woman, a man, you know, gender fluid, whichever in the gender spectrum you identified, if you are somebody who cares for children, especially boys, if you have the chance to influence a young boy, just remind them that it's okay to share their emotions. You know, don't tell them to tough it up when they fall down in the playground. Give them that space and that room to cry, to say that they're scared. Also, don't tell them that by bullying girls here in the classroom is because they like them. So, you know, just watch out for those little messages that you're giving boys growing up, and also girls growing up, that are really going to have an impact and are going to shape their teenage years and their adulthood, because that's a big part of how we set limits for children. Those little messages that we think are harmless, that convey so much. You know, even when we just tell them, nothing happened to your knee, tough it up, you're okay, you're a boy. What is that supposed to mean? So just be mindful of what you say around children. remember they're little human beings that have a right to explore and express their emotions.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. And as someone with a young kiddo, it's definitely a challenge to be thinking about doing things in that different way, because some of those things are just so ingrained within our society of like, boys don't cry, girls got to be careful around, and so I deeply appreciate those last thoughts, and just, like bringing forth again that like that's sort of the whole premise of these conversations here at the kitchen table, as we call it. And and we're not always sitting at a kitchen table, right? But it is this idea of we're trying to model creating spaces like this where conversations can happen with men and masculine people, where we can talk about those emotions, we can talk about the hurts, and we can also ask questions and say, I don't actually know what that means, or, what is patriarchy and how does that show up in our lives? And, what can I do about that? And yeah, so I'm just deeply grateful to all of you. All of you are my relatives, I believe, and just grateful for what I always constantly, taking things from these conversations, and the ones off camera as well. And so we just want to encourage every one of you who have been able to tune in. We thank you for tuning in and joining us. And we also want to just encourage you to do it. You can do this within your own life. You can have conversations like these with your friends, with your brothers, whoever it is. And we are always here if folks want to reach out to us. If you want us to kind of help you figure out what that looks like in your lives, all of us, I think, would love to have that conversation. So you can reach out to us at the Men and Masculine Folks Network anytime. And just thank you again for all of you joining us for this 26th live kitchen table conversation. Thank you, Ivette, for being here and just for sharing all of your wisdom and experience, and just that part of you. I know we all are deeply grateful for that. So thank you. And as always, we want to just take a quick second to thank our funding partners, who are Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota and the Novo Foundation, for all of their support in continuing these conversations at the network. And just a reminder, our next conversation will be 2 weeks from today. So again, these are every 2 weeks at noon Central Standard Time. So the next one will be Thursday, September 9th at noon Central Time. And we are excited to announce we will be welcoming another special guest star onto the stage here with us. So I'm not going to give too much away, but stay tuned, and we hope that you'll join us for that upcoming conversation. Leave that little cliffhanger for you all. And yeah, don't forget, like our page on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube and find all of our conversations for like the last year. Watch them all. We would love for that to happen. And as always, we hope all of you take good care, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, everyone, for all you do.